questions.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. It is 8:44. And everyone's had time to take a look at the minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes?
Two sets for the end government.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the two sets of minutes ready to approve. I'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion for governance meeting.
Okay,
Motion by Bob, separate.
You can do it separately. Please.
Motion by Bob,
Second.
second by me. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we have the approval of the minutes from the meeting on May 12th.
So moved.
So moved by Harry,
I'll second.
second by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And treasurer's report. Bob?
Okay, we start with the statement of cash transactions as always. Interest for the month and the payment, the yearly payment from Yahoo came in at $109,200. So actually our total receipts this month are $109,333. Going out, disbursements, regular payment to the town for travel, our Toshiba contract. The Lawnsmith was the
It's a
Rush
fourth, yeah, remember, it's the fourth quarter of 21 and then the first quarter of this year.
and then our National Grid regular payment of 100. So disbursements of 6515, 69 for 100. If we go to the income statement, a little more detail, again, you see the two things that came in from Yahoo and interest. We had the admin and management fees, meeting expense, there was travel, the operation of these utilities was the announcement, and you see the 6550 and 69. So total net profit for the month is 12817.72. Going to the balance sheet. So we have two sides. No, that's so we have 210, 018 in the checking account and 1568, 1671 in the savings account. Total assets of 2792, 504. We see the bonds there, the current and the long-term bond, the accrued litigation, accrued liability for litigation, total 305,440. So again, total fund balance of 1473,319, and total liabilities, investment in fixed assets, and fund balance of 2792,504.
Alrighty. Need a motion to approve the May 31st financial statements.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Jean, a second. Second by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then invoices and bills.
Okay, so the bills we want to pay for June, the monthly contract in April, credit card expenses to the town, about $41.85. Town's mileage and, is the phone tripod for meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, is that?
Sure.
Great. Summit sign,
Presentation and maybe the town board.
website maintenance, and the
Annual membership meeting of commercial realtors. And I would just comment on the North Shore Solutions. Remember, the town has a new website, it's been switched to a new hosting entity. It made sense from our perspective to move it to the same hosting company, if you will. But the other charge that's in there is, I don't think we noticed this until we changed hostings, but there were two or three aspects of our site when it was a mobile application that really didn't translate, so I asked them to fix those. So that's really a combination of, hey, we're now going to host it, plus some work to fix a couple sort of latent mobile applications.
So our total bills for the month of June, that I estimate paid are $5267.86. And I can make a motion to pay those bills.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Actually, Bob made a motion to pay the bills. Second by Harry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Administrative Director's report.
Nothing super substantive in terms of the park. I think you're all aware from previous meetings that it is our understanding that there will be a purchase of the former BCKH building. All I can tell you is that that property has been surveyed, that property is now being mowed by the new owner. I do not yet see any renovations, and there will be some fairly substantive renovations to that building, so I'll keep an eye out for those and let you know when those renovations have begun. Bag renovations or expansion, I think I've sent you pictures, unfortunately, last week or so. The steel is all up, obviously, but I don't think it'll be until later this week that some of the skin and so on goes on the building, but that probably shouldn't surprise us given how difficult it is to coordinate contractors and so on. You're all familiar with the fact that we have a lease agreement with Bull Hall Farms to farm the 10 acres in the corner of Enterprise and Junction Road. That updated agreement has been received, as has been the fee. The fee will show in our June financials. That's why you don't see it there now. You're all familiar with Avient, former Poly 1. I have been a little bit concerned that I hadn't seen rail cars there. As you know, it's really the only entity in the park that uses the rail spur. In reaching out to the leadership, I sort of indirectly realized that there's been a change and now somewhat of a gap in leadership. On the one hand, that business is not under a pilot, so it's per se not necessarily our direct concern. On the other hand, I always like to know that there's significant stable leadership. The only thing I have learned is, for the most part, those rail cars came with either talc to keep the product from binding up and or just bulk sort of raw materials. And I think given what's going on in the car industry, which was like 80% of what they did, they really shifted to much more smaller batch, diverse product line. And so for the time being, they don't need to use the rail spur. But I'll let you know and certainly reach out to the new plant manager once that position's been filled. I was able to, a couple weeks ago, I guess now, attend the New York State Economic Development Council's annual meetings. Just 2 or 3 minor highlights. We've talked before about how the approximate, or the project referred to as FAST, like getting ready for shovel-ready sites, was a topic. Unfortunately for us, the guidelines of who and what can qualify for, let's say, site survey and prep work won't take place until at least the 3rd quarter. The good news is it will use the consolidated funding application when that's done. So we'll talk more later this year about what aspects we may want to include to try and receive funding under FAST. An obvious example is updated wetlands delineations, let's say. I would also mention I attended a program on the whole cannabis industry. It remains to see if we see much activity anywhere in that sort of stream from production to testing to distribution and so on. And then lastly, I think you're all aware, but there is a new entity called New York Creates, which is attempting to be one of the national semiconductor centers of excellence, if you will. Remains to be seen when that takes place, but interesting nonetheless. I also attended through the Commercial Realtor Group's utility and alternate energy session. I don't know that there's anything pertinent to raise today, and then you already saw in Bob's report that the 2022 project fee from Yahoo for BF 2.2 has been received. A little bit of a surprise, because back when they were associated with Verizon, surprise, there were a whole host of extra steps and invoices that had to be created, and that wasn't the case now that it's, quote, just Yahoo under the Apollo group. So that has been received. And lastly, if you look at the marketing report forward it. Going forward, we'll be modifying our website statistics. We really used to just tell you how many people reached out and reviewed our site. You can see now, and this is incomplete data for May, but not only how many sessions, how many actual pages were reviewed, how many of them were new visitors versus return visitors. Maybe not as important, how many of them were reviewed via desktop versus mobile application. And then maybe most important to us, which pages were most typically visited. Maybe not surprising, it was homepage first, the IDA board second, which would be a means to receive the live stream and YouTube videos, and then meetings and agendas, and then lastly, projects. So we'll, begin to present these a little bit differently going forward, but they're, more complete statistics, so. I think that's all I have. I do have a few things for executive session, choose to go into it, but that's it for now, unless there's questions.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
TAL gives it raw material in production.
Yeah.
Or 20%, 40% TAL.
Mhm.
So it's used in HVAC.
Thank you, Bob. All right, we'll move on to the attorney's report.
Just a few items for executive.
All right, any old business? New business, we have on the agenda solar pilot resolution, but we're going to postpone that. We will not be taking any action on this item today so that we can further process the comments that were made today in the public hearing. Any other new business? Okay. I'll need a motion to move into executive session for consultation with the attorney.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Eric, second by Janine. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're in executive session, so we will need to